All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We are talking about invitational speaking. And over time, you're going to learn that you may be able to not change audience attitudes or want to change them, but sometimes you can still enter in a public dialogue. And invitational speaking, we've been talking about informative speeches, persuasive speeches. Invitational speaking is a type of public speaking in which a speaker enters into a dialogue with an audience to clarify positions, explore issues or ideas, or articulate beliefs and values. And so this is an attempt at public deliberation, to have dialogue, to seek mutual recognition despite firm differences in opinions, values, and beliefs. And so put up the definition for you guys so you guys can see what we're talking about here. Public deliberation allows us to engage in a process that involves the careful weighing of information and views. So it gives people ample time to speak and to listen to others, dialogue that bridges the differences among participants, speaking because we're well-informed or want to be well-informed or open to different ideas and positions, and respectful to others, even if they hold different views or opinions. So let me give you guys an example. I'm going to put an example here on the board so you guys can kind of see the difference. So we've been talking about informative speeches, persuasive speeches. So we've got a scenario on the board here. So we've got 5-day to a 4-day school week, right? So we're talking right now a lot about education in our state. So here's a scenario to give you. Let me give you guys just kind of an example here of some of the differences. So with an informative speech, if you were talking about the scenario of a 5-day to a 4-day school week, you'd be describing the proposal, right? So if we were to talk about a persuasive speech, you're going to ask for support to transition to a 4-day school week and probably encourage them to take some type of action, right, initiative. So if we talk about invitational, we're actually talking about engaging an audience in civil and open discussion of the topic without trying to persuade the audience of a right decision. So what are some of the advantages or disadvantages, if you will, of going from a 5-day to a 4-day school week? What do you guys think? What are some advantages, disadvantages of making that transition?
One of the parents going to get kids on the 5th day.
Okay. Yeah, so
They're all working.
So daycare, right? Yeah, exactly. That's a big one right there, yeah. Yeah. What else do you guys think? What are some other things that might come up if you're making a switch from a 5-day to 4-day? It could be advantages or disadvantages of either one.
Advantages is you would have less expenses for the school district.
Okay.
They're not paying the salary for those days, for that 5th day.
Right.
Or utilities.
Right. So expenses for the schools, but utilities, salaries, and salaries are yearly, but yeah, I mean, there's depends on hourly, things like that. Yeah, wages. You're right. Yeah, those are things. What else? Can you guys think of things that might change or might be different because of that? Well, go ahead.
Sports.
Yeah, athletics, right?
Yeah.
Right. Athletics will definitely be impacted by that. That's kind of going on right now this week, right? I mean, the schools are out, but sports are still having to go on. I know, like my daughter, she plays soccer for a high school team here in the city, and they're supposed to play a team tomorrow night because their schools continue to go on with their activities, but some schools are not, and only if they are open are they going on. So that school, and it's a district game, so it's going to have to be made up. So, but I went through and just looked at some things. You talk about advantages of 4-day school weeks. It's proven to, one source says it's proven to improve academic performance. Some people believe that is the case. Some people believe that it helps schools and residents save money, kind of like you were talking about. It enhances teacher and student morale. So if teachers and students are given the chance to get more rest and get ready to engage with each other, come school days, the morale across the board will dramatically improve. So you got that little longer break, Promotes responsibility. So a 4-day school week is believed to be a great way to instill a sense of responsibility among school children. What do you guys think of that? You think that's the case? I'm not sure about that. As proponents point out, giving children an extra day off from school would teach them the importance of budgeting time wisely. How many of you guys budgeted time wisely whenever you were in school? I know I did not. So yeah, right? I wish I had, and my kids probably do a better job of it than I do. We have, and then you have some things that are, here's some other some disadvantages. You mentioned talking about childcare concerns for childcare. Most families normally have two working parents with the 4-day school week, and their needs to spend their hard-earned money on childcare services on weekends would be increased. I've noticed this week up at the Health Science Center, I've seen some kids running around with their parents, so there's a little bit of that going on right now with school being out. Fortunately for us, my wife is a school teacher, and our kids are all older, and so they can drive because they have a daughter in college. So, but for some people, that is a real issue right now, right? So that would be an issue for some people as well, because like you mentioned, they work 5 days. It results in lessened focus. This is what some people believe, because students, while some students will be able to make the shift from the 4-day school week easily, other students learn differently and may not be able to handle such a dramatic shift. So making this so some people might not handle it well. Some people believe it lessens hands-on learning. So some students might need more time in a classroom and benefit from hands-on method learning. So if they're not in the classroom as much with direct supervision, with experienced teachers, they might be left with their own devices, with more time. And so there's some things there. Some people believe that going to 4-day school week will give better teacher and student morale, provide students an opportunity for extra rest, less stressful environment, reduce discipline referral frequency. I'm not sure about that one either, but fewer days spent in class might mean fewer discipline referrals for students. So one superintendent claims that he feels like that would be the case. And you have, improvement of attendance. Some district representatives that have implemented 4-day school weeks report that attendance has improved for teachers and students. Right? So academic improvement. An increase in academic achievement has also been associated with 4-day week. Reduction in financial costs. We kind of covered that one already. So you can see there's advantages and disadvantages. So you can see where, if you talk about, this scenario we have up here on the board, 5-day to a 4-day school week, informative is just simply going to describe a proposal shifting from a 5-day to a 4-day school week. A persuasive speech is going to basically ask for support to transition from a 5-day to a 4-day school week, encouraging them to take action. Whereas an invitational is going to engage audiences in a civil and open discussion of the topic without trying to persuade audience of the right decision. And as you guys saw, from just listing those different examples, you're going to get conflicting information, right? Some people believe that, yes, it is going to be good for school, it's going to be good for kids, good for families. Some people say it's not. And so you can see there's some legitimate options there on both sides. And so when we talk about invitational environment, it's a little bit different than when we talk about our informative speeches or persuasive speeches. Our goal is to create an invitational environment. That's our highest priority. And so really the goal is to understand the issue fully. You want to be able to respect different views, right? And as we saw just from that one example right there, there are differing views. You want to be able to appreciate the range of possible positions on the views, even if they're different than your own. Okay, so there's going to be people with different views, different viewpoints coming from different backgrounds. And you want to be able to engage with your audience, right? You want to be able to engage with your audience, allow enough time for a variety of positions. So that's a goal, is to create an invitational environment. And so you're creating a space in which your audience can express its views just as you can express your own. And so we had a situation with our church a few years ago. How many of you guys are familiar with the MAPS 3 project? You guys familiar with that? So obviously MAPS has been a big part of kind of the renewal in Oklahoma City for a long time now. Our church had the opportunity to sell part of its land for MAPS 3 for a senior health and wellness center, right? And so that exists now. It's actually on a land that did belong to our church that's adjacent to our property. And so as you can imagine, something like that, there's probably different opinions on what to do, and do we make this decision, right? You don't just sell your land, if you're a church, because there's lots of things you have to take into consideration in terms of what you want to do with the land. Do you want to utilize that for your, to add on, to build on, to make a family life center, or there's other things down the road that you might want to do for your community. But they had the opportunity to be able to sell part of their land to this senior health and wellness center, and they did it. And I think it's like a 40,000 square foot building. It's got like an indoor fitness pool. It's got a full-size gym. It's got full equipped exercise room, an aerobics room, classroom space, kitchen, outdoor bocce ball court, art studio, cafe lounge, and so on and so forth. It's got a lot of stuff, right? And so as part of that, when you come into a decision that's a big decision like that affects so many different people, you have to think about the fact that there's going to be a lot of people coming from different views on it, right? And so it's not something that one or two people are decision that they're going to make. It's something that would be a great subject to take to an invitational environment, because you have to think about not just the people that currently attend the church or the people that are later on going to be going to the facility or utilizing the facility. You have to think long term, right? Not just now, but for years to come, and how it impacts future generations. I can tell you, so far, it's been incredibly beneficial for the church, and I think also as well for the Senior Health and Wellness Center. And so it's been a mutually great partnership. And I know the church is utilized for the facility, and it's great for us. But there's definitely things that you have to walk through to get to that point. It's not something you can just, you're just there overnight. And so the goal is to try and to create an invitational environment. And so in terms of the invitational environment, this type of thing occurs at every level of society. So local, national, state. It happens on a community level where people have to examine questions, plans, issues, and policies. Quality of life is something obviously you take into consideration too. Parking, housing, transportation services, resources, and in terms of just the financial aspect too, that it has tuition, zoning, taxes, zoning ordinances in the city, government services, things like that. So those are all things that you look at. You guys probably, as you're reading through your book, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read through module 10, but they talk in there about that redevelopment that took place after the World Trade Center was destroyed during 9/11, and just everything that went into that, and how many different people were brought in to decide what they were going to do to memorialize. And so there was quite a process, and I won't go into detail because you guys probably read that in your book, but there's a lot that goes through that to get to that point. And many different people were consulted. And so, as you can imagine, the speaker does have a prominent role, just like a speaker would in an informational speech and a persuasive speech, but it's a little bit different, okay? So what are you trying to do? What's the speaker's role when you're trying to give an informative speech? What are some of your goals? As an informative speaker, what are some of the things you guys have been working on informative speeches? What are you trying to do?
In an invitational speaking, it's probably to make sure both sides have their say.
Okay.
And also probably trying to keep the discussion civil.
Okay. Yeah. So, but as far as informative is concerned, what you guys are working on right now, what are some of the goals of just an informative speech? Right, you're trying to educate them about something they may not know that much about, right? And trying to inform the listener. What about persuasive? What are your goals for persuasive? Want to try and do what? What do you think, John? What are you trying to do with persuasive speech? Right, that's exactly right. You're trying to change their mind, right? You're trying to get them to change their mind about something and maybe take some type of an action. Sometimes it's to go out and do something. Sometimes it's just passive agreement with what you're saying. But sometimes you're trying to actually get them to take action. Well, with this type of speech, and your role here is going to be a little bit different because the speaker has to kind of alter their role. In terms of the role between the speaker and the audience, and rather than taking on the role of an expert that's coming and talking, giving an informative, persuasive speech, the speaker is also a listener to the audience, and so the invitational speaker considers himself both an expert and a listener because they're going to play both roles. So that's part of the speaker's role. Another part of it is just being able to facilitate a discussion of ideas, right? Not just a speech given by one person, but this person's going to be interacting with the audience, kind of like what you were talking about, being able to hear differing opinions from different sides. And so the person that's leading this type of talk is going to have to do a pretty good job of maintaining interaction with his audience, allowing them to feel like that they have the freedom to talk, that they can discuss ideas without being shot down from other people. And so it's creating that type of environment. So it's a little different role. He or she has to be able to allow for there to be the exchange of views without ridicule. And so he's helping kind of create that environment, if you will. Also, too, you allow the audience to see each other as knowledgeable and capable, right? And so you're creating an environment in which people feel like that, I need to listen to what other people in this group have to say because what they have to say may be important. And I can learn from that, or we can learn from each other, right? It's not just one person doing all the talking, but it's an environment in which people, you recognize that other people have knowledge I may not have, or they're capable of providing information I may not be able to provide. And same thing, I might be able to add something to this conversation that other people may not be able to add. Just going back to, the example with the Health and Wellness Center, right? You have people that are different age groups that are going to be able to provide different types of feedback in that type of environment, right? So people who are older who are probably going to use the facility more versus people who are in their early 20s, have young kids. How do they feel about it? Do they want rather some area for their children or a family life center there as opposed to allowing the city to come in and build something on the property that was once owned by the church? So you have to take into consideration different people are going to bring different things to the table, and it allows you to kind of get a better picture from listening to all these different voices as they contribute to the conversation. And so you're creating an atmosphere of mutual respect, of understanding, and of exploration, that you're going to go through this process together, right? So you're going to communicate effectively with people with positions different than your own. And so there's some things that are important to help facilitate this type of environment, right? There's things that are necessary. One is equality. So what do you think I mean by that when we say equality?
You treat all people the same.
Okay.
If you let this group who thinks this way talk,
right,
you need to let the opposing side have kind of equal time.
Right. Yeah, part of it is going to be providing equal time to other groups that are within the group, that you're allowing them to be able to say what you. So part of it's going to be making sure that you allow that, right? That you make time for allowing more than one or multiple views to be discussed. What else? What comes to your minds, John, when you think of equality? We were talking about in terms of allowing this condition of equality to exist. So we talk about time. What else do you think would equality equate to?
Like you mean the time, giving the time for the topics?
Yeah, it can be time, but also too, I'm thinking about as well, but what they have to say is just as important. So the time aspect, but also too, the weight of what they have to say is just as valuable. Like one opinion or one group, what they have to say or contribute is just as valuable. Yeah. And so just kind of this idea of equality, that people have or hold valuable perspectives, that they're worthy of exploration. And if people feel that coming into the environment, what are they more likely to do?
They're going to keep talking and it'll be calmer.
Right, exactly. They're going to be more willing to open up, right? Right, and it probably will create a more calm atmosphere, I would think, yeah, too, if they feel like that they're going to be allowed time to be heard. Because I think that's, with some people, I think sometimes there's tension created because people feel like they're not going to be able to express their mind, right? And so, yeah, I think that you have to have that sense of equality, that you acknowledge that people hold valuable perspectives, that what they have to say is worthy of exploration. And so part of it is that, and part of it for the speaker too is that the language the speaker uses, the delivery, and the presentation ideas lets your audience know that you recognize them as having knowledge and perspectives that are valid. And so part of it as a speaker is going to be you creating that sense of equality and allowing them, by the way you present the information, by recognizing that they have knowledge and that they have perspectives that are valid, that they can add to the conversation. Just like that, when they went through the issue with creating the monument for 9/11 for the World Trade Center. They went through a process of getting several different people. People that were victims, people that were engineers, families of victims, people that survived, and so they got a variety of different sources to help to contribute to that, and they went through several processes to get it right, and so they took their time, and they valued the opinion. We're going to talk more about that in a second, but the audience can add perspective, they can share ideas, they can even question the speaker, right? So in an informative speech and a persuasive speech, that's a little different. You don't usually see the audience questioning a speaker, but in this type of environment, when you're doing this type of a speech, there is some questioning that can take place of the speaker. And in that sense of safety, kind of like you were talking about, Kevin, that really invites sharing. That allows people to talk, be willing to share more what's on their mind. And so you have equality. The second one is value. What do you think is meant by value when we talk about bringing value? An important condition is value. What do you think, Fabio? What do you think value would mean?
Like, I guess don't just acknowledge just one person because they have the same, not belief, but I guess the same opinion.
Okay.
And instead, like, just thinking the other person that doesn't have the same opinion like you just don't really care about it. Right, yeah. So this is not a time to, like, if someone doesn't necessarily agree with you, you shut them down, or we're not gonna value what they have to say. We're gonna lessen that, or we're not gonna give them time. That's not the time for this. This valuing is saying that we're gonna allow them to have time. We're gonna listen to what they have to say. We're gonna recognize the inherent value of individual members of the audience, not just particularly one view, but multiple views. And so that's the difference here is looking at multiple views, allowing the audience to know that if they share different views, if they share different opinions, those are going to be valued. Those are going to be explored in a spirit of mutual understanding, without judgment, without an effort to try and change them. Their goal is not to get them to where you want them to be. The goal is to discuss these ideas openly, without judgment, and explore that in a spirit of mutual understanding. And so you have to really begin to step out of your standpoint and understand the world as people in your audience sees that. What is that called? We've talked about that this semester. Trying to see the world through other people's eyes. Right, exactly. Yeah, kind of coming with that empathetic attitude of understanding and trying to see the world as other people see it. If disagreements arise, you and other participants in the dialogue try to understand opposing positions and reasons people hold their views, right? So sometimes disagreements are going to take place. And what I think a speaker can do is help kind of create a mutual understanding, but also dialogue to where we begin to try and understand, right? Not just allow people to voice opinion, not necessarily going to agree on everything they say, but to begin to actually try to understand the positions that people have and the reason that they hold the views that they have. And so the last one that's important to this condition is just self-determination. Self-determination. So what do you think self-determination would be in regards to creating an environment for this type of dialogue? Really what it's doing is allowing audience members to recognize and empowering to recognize they're experts in their own life, right? That they know what's best for them, and they have the right to make choices based on that knowledge, right? So their experiences are going to be different than my experiences, and your experiences are going to be different than my experiences. And so recognizing that they have experience, that they've got a background, they've got a history, and they know what works best for their lives. Another thing too is just self-determination, determination, just allowing the audience to feel free to decide how they want to think, how they want to feel, how they want to act. It's a little different, right, than a persuasive speech where we're trying to get them to come to our side, to get them to do a specific action. We're trying to persuade them, direct them. This is different than that. We're trying to allow them to be free to decide how they think, feel, and act. So that's different. You don't
you don't want to try and close off conversation or try and persuade the audience to do something it may not feel inclined to do, right? People need to feel in control of their choices and feel respected for the ability to make them, right? And so it's a little different in that way. So let's talk for a second about speeches to explore an issue, right? So I've got some things up here for you guys on the screen to look at, and just when we talk about speeches to explore an issue. First of all, what we're going to do is we want to start out by engaging the audience in a discussion about an idea, about a concern, a topic, a plan, right? So we want to start out by doing that, and our goal is to present an overview, right, of the issue. You want to try and gather perspectives from the audience in order to understand the subject more fully. And then you want to start by stating your intention to explore the issue, right? So you start off by talking about what's the intent, what are you trying to explore? And then at that point, what you want to try and do is you want to try and lay out as many positions as possible, right? So we're giving multiple perspectives here. This is more than just presenting two sides. We're giving multiple perspectives. So having 3 or more perspectives, what it's going to do is going to help the audience understand the issue's complexity and just the potential difficulty, right, in making this decision. So there's a lot of different things that go into making a decision, right? Just like there were with the Health and Wellness Center that we looked at, and just like there was, obviously, with making the decision for the memorial for the World Trade Center, there's things that you have to consider. And so having 3 or more perspectives helps them see it's a complex issue. And then just in terms of exploring the issue, you have to see that people can see that they can share their opinion on the issue, that they can add to the dialogue, right? My goal as a speaker is not to try and persuade them, but allow them to help add to the conversation, to the dialogue. And so you're trying to lay the groundwork for an open dialogue rooted in equality, kind of like we talked about, self-determination and value, where people feel are heard and respected by each other.
I can see that having 3 or more perspectives can also help the audience feel part of the conversation from the get-go.
Right, exactly.
So yes, I associate with that idea.
Right.
Where if you are just up there saying like 1 or 2 ideas,
exactly.
Like, what about this third one?
Right.
You're already excluding me.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so it allows your audience to get engaged in a way that they might not otherwise from the get-go. I mean, I think that's an important way to look at it. All right. So we're going to look for just a second at some organizational patterns. So you guys are going to be familiar with some of these because we've covered them. But let's talk for just a second about how they relate to invitational speeches. So let's talk first about chronological. And I'm going to give you guys a scenario. I hope you guys can read that, and if not, I'll help kind of with that. But so the chronological pattern, as you guys know, it allows you to trace a sequence of events or ideas, right? So chronological patterns allow you to share history and offer background information that may help audience members enter a discussion. So how would that help, do you think, with this type of a speech, with a invitational speak, to be able to look at background or history? How would an invitational speech be helpful with that, do you think? Well, let's take a look at this example real quick here. So in this chronological example, it says the purpose is to invite the audience to explore the issues involved by implementing bilingual education in public schools across the United States. So the thesis statement simply is bilingual education has a long and controversial history in the United States, and understanding the complexity of this history helps us understand today's framing of the issue. And so the main points the author gives here is historically bilingual education was designed to provide a better education for children who immigrated from a variety of countries. After World War I, legislation changed in many states, reducing the support for bilingual education. Today's debates over bilingual education reflect the cost, the kind of education, as well as the right for children whose first language is not English to quality education. And then fourth, now that we see the complex history, changing views, benefits, and costs of bilingual education, I'd like to explore this issue with my audience. So how is chronological helping this situation?
You're kind of looking at history, present, you can even relate it to the future.
Right. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. Very good. So it allows us to see the history of this issue and go back and see what has taken place over time, right? Very good. And then we have not only chronological, but spatial as well. And so this invites the audience, allows the audience to help organize ideas according to location and geography, right? So it's helpful when you're discussing what a topic has in common or how it differs across countries, nation states, or cities. Used to invite audiences to see how localities have dealt with many types of public issues, such as transportation, health, poverty, crime, education, and pollution. So what's something that's going on right now that our lawmakers here in the state could look at in terms of spatial?
Education.
Right. And in regards to, specifically, what?
Funding.
Right. In regards to funding, right? I believe there's another state right now, I think it's Kentucky, that their teachers are striking as well. There's another state that I think just came off teacher strike. But to look at what other states have done to help fund education, right? Makes sense? And so that would be a great way to use a spatial pattern, is to look and analyze, how could you best fund education, teacher raises, but also to improving, what's going on in the classroom in terms of the resources that children have access to, that type of thing. What have other states done? What have other cities done? So looking at that spatial example allows you to connect your position to help others, your audience, by exploring an issue using information from other places, right? So this example here that they gave was just, talks about, they're referring to just like hate crimes committed across the country and beginning to heal due to what happened in their town specifically. And so they're looking at hate crimes committed in other communities and what other communities did to help, heal from the tragedy. So this is spatial. They're looking at different parts of the country and the country's responses to hate crime. This is something, obviously, too, that was, there's been a lot of in the news over the last, couple of years about these types of issues as well. And so we can learn from what works and what doesn't work in other parts of the country. That first point being the response of a Texas community to the hate crime against James Byrd Jr. involved in both public and private actions. Skipping over to Wyoming community to a hate crime against Matthew Shepard, both private and public response. The response of a California community to the hate crime against a church with a largely Middle Eastern congregation. And the last one there is just, with these responses in mind, I'd like to invite the audience to discuss ways in which we might respond to our own recent tragedies. So in that instance, they're looking at hate crimes and talking about what we can learn from how other communities responded, what they did, local law enforcement, what can we do here in our community to respond. So spatial. So that would be another example where that would apply. And then you have topical. Topical just allowing you to discuss your topic point by point, share dilemmas from each issue, and remain open to alternatives, new information and concerns. And so, example I have for you guys up here is just looking at the death penalty. Right, that's something that's obviously a hot button issue. But is it just and efficient in terms of keeping an inmate in prison for life? Thesis statement just being, although the death penalty is commonly accepted as a just form of punishment, keeping inmates in prison without the possibility of parole may be a better solution, but both approaches present ethical dilemmas. And it goes on to list, life sentences may be a better option than death penalty, primarily because they have been cases of innocent people who have been placed on death row and subsequently executed. And then they give the death penalty does not seem to deter people from committing murder. Surprisingly, a life sentence is cheaper for taxpayers than execution. However, the suffering caused by a lifetime spent in prison cannot be overlooked. Because much of each approach presents moral dilemmas, I'd like to invite my audience to explore the implications of sentencing people who commit serious crimes to life in prison as compared to sentencing them to death. So in this instance, we're talking about different topics that we can cover. And so this would be a great example of a topical speech. And then finally, just in terms of speeches, we have the multiple perspective pattern. And this is going to allow you to systematically address many sides and positions of an issue before opening a speech up for dialogue, exploration, deliberation with an audience. So you're really trying to illustrate multiple perspectives here. So a variety of opinions, inviting the audience to consider more views than those covered, and allows rooms for additional perspectives. And so the key with this is really doing your research so you can be able to explain various issues on the topic, presenting each perspective fairly, so audience members can really make their own assessments and make room for even more points of view to be offered from the audience when you open up your speech for dialogue, right? So if you guys can see here on the board, we've got the multiple perspective view. And so in this instance, they're talking about teaching theories of creation and the role of U.S. education. Another thing that's been kind of a hot button issue over the last 10, 15 years. And you have many different theories on that. And so, it talks about the fact that thesis statement here, schools in the United States consider teaching some of the many theories throughout time and across culture that explain how the universe was created, particularly creationism, Big Bang Theory, intelligent design, and as well as other theories. And so it goes through and lays out, the Judeo-Christian theory for creation. It talks about the Big Bang Theory. It has origins to a Greek philosopher. It talks a little bit here about, intelligent design in terms of the accounts for the origins of RNA and DNA, as well as African and Egyptian civilizations and Native American thoughts in terms of creation too. And so just discussing with the audience the possibility of these creation theories and that these differing theories might be taught in public schools and what would be the benefit from that in terms of creating an inclusive curriculum. And so there's been a lot of debate over that over the years over, teaching Big Bang, teaching intelligent design, the biblical or Judeo-Christian view of creationism and how to go about what's the best way of doing that. And so this would be a multiple perspective speech where you could be able to lay out many different perspectives and talk about them and discuss them as a group.